Is everybody in that was in the waiting room now?
I'm here, Sean. Kevin Cool.
Oh, okay.
Sean, this is Dave. I'm here.
Okay. Well, it is 3:02, so we can go ahead and get started. I know at the meeting, Mike, usually the chair does the roll call, but I got a list of the names here, so I can just read them off, and then you can take it from there.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll start the building advisory board meeting for Tuesday, March 9th, 2021. Start with roll call. Mike McCall.
Here.
Ryan White. Kevin Cool.
Here.
Mark Frazier. Dwayne Grace. New member, Mr. Holmgren.
Here.
Kraus, are you here?
Yes.
Okay. William McBride. David Miller. Greg Nichols.
Yeah, I'm here.
Rick Walters. And Marion, our youth member. Okay. Well, we got 5 members here out of 11. So we're not going to be doing any official action on anything today, so you don't have to vote on anything. And so if you've read the agenda, we're going to go over minutes from the last meeting. I guess we can't approve those, so we'll have to bump item 2.1 to the next meeting since we don't have a quorum. And then we can go over the rest of the stuff on here. We can do the annual report to the city commission and the code update information, and also the Rick's report on code footprint stuff. So anyway, Mike, if you want to take it away.
All right. I guess we'll start with new business. Anything from the public that would like to speak? Hearing none. Have you received any emails or anything, Sean? Any questions?
No, I have not.
All right. Hearing none, we will move on to legislative matters 3.2. We have none. Following that, we'll have administrative items, the annual BAB report to the city commission. Sean.
All right. You should have received a copy of this in your packets. Attaches the annual report that's been submitted to the city commission. And I can kind of go over this a little bit. We only met 3 times last year due to COVID and lack of agenda items. So our annual report was fairly brief this year. Accomplishments: board reviewed its bylaws and considered changes to make them similar to other boards. The board held training on citizen volunteer board requirements. Goals for next year: I put down board will work with staff to improve code appeal and property maintenance appeal hearing process. The board will continue to address the continuing education needs for the contractors and will provide direction on providing CEU opportunities. Number 3, the board will continue to seek involvement from the design professional and contractors to ensure that we are providing the best service possible for the residents of Salina. And number 4, the board will present process of reviewing and updating Salina's model construction codes. I'll go in a little bit deeper into that here in the next segment. Other items of interest, didn't really have anything. and then of course the attendance of last year's meetings is listed there. Our
I have a
bylaws.
question.
Yeah.
I don't see Mike's name on that list.
Yeah, that's that was the only one I noticed. I wasn't on that list, so I'm not sure what happened.
I
Well,
want to make sure you either didn't. Maybe he was on the next page and it got
it might have, I think it was, and it got it kind of chunked
crossed
off
in
there.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember writing your numbers down. So my apologies, Mr. Chair.
And if there are others on a page too, that I only got page 1, so.
Yeah, I think whenever it got scanned into the packet, we didn't get the where you were on there, Mike. So my apologies. So anyway, yeah, I do remember putting him on there. And there is a general bylaw rule that you have to come to at least half the meetings. But since we only had 3 last year, we're not going to penalize anybody for missing last year. So we'll kind of start fresh this year. We're going to meet more this year, a lot more. So I think that'll come back around. So anyway, that's all of that. So.
All right. Our next topic is discussion on code update.
Okay. I've been working pretty hard on we call it a project management plan here, and it basically spells out the whole process on how we're going to go about reasons why we need code update, reasons for doing it, the method of which we're going to do it, meeting layouts, all this business. I've got that about 90% done. Have to get that over to the city manager for approval for us to move forward on that. At the next building advisory board meeting, I will bring that to you guys, and then you can someone can bring it up as a motion, whether or not we want to, move forward or not. And if we do, then we can move ahead and start scheduling that whole process. But that will be at the next meeting. I'll bring that to you, and we can kind of get rolling. But yeah, as of right now, I gotta get it to the city manager for approval, and then we'll bring it back to the board.
All right.
All right.
Let's see. Number 4, unfinished business. We have a presentation on code footprint.
Yeah. What we're going to do, I'm going to have Rick's going to go over. He's got a PowerPoint here. We'll share screens here, so we'll bring that forward. And then at the conclusion of the meeting, or actually if everybody's there or while you're here, that's fine. But shoot me an email while you're here, so we have an email address to get back to you for your certificate for continuing education. This meeting will count for that, obviously. But I need you to, everybody on the call, not just the board members, to shoot me an email either while Rick's talking or after the meeting, or however you want to do it. But shoot me an email letting me know that you were there, and so we have an email address to send it back to you. Board members, you don't have to do that. We've got your names down here, and we already have your contact stuff. But everybody else, if you could shoot me a note, and it is my email address is Sean, SEAN, Pilcher, PILCHER @salina.org. So yeah, shoot me a note and we'll get your certificates out. And with that, Rick, if you want to take it away.
All right, we're ready. What we've got is a real brief, sort of a code footprint 101 is what I would call it. I've been all over the country and made some presentations in Nebraska and Washington, D.C. and places like that. But normally we don't get a whole lot of time. So I've tried to give you an idea, give you a little background, and then a couple examples. And then the last is some case studies, and then save some time for some questions. The thing I would tell you, and I don't know how you want me to tell you to advance, but go ahead to the next slide. Or do I do it? There it goes. Now, like I said, it's brief highlights, so we're just going to hit the tops, and then at the end, we'll try to address some specific questions. So go ahead and go on. As you see, in 1995, design was added to construction and maintenance to define when the Kansas Fire Prevention Code was being regulated in Kansas. And that is applicable for the 80,000 square miles, 2.5 million plus people that are in the state. So if you advance. The Kansas Fire Prevention Code, and I use simple graphics to try to illustrate real quickly what it is the Kansas Fire Prevention Code actually regulates for commercial buildings. All commercial buildings in Kansas, other than federal and those quasi-federal type businesses or agencies. And as you see, it goes egress, notification, detection, separation, suppression, but it goes through all three phases of the design through the maintenance of the building. So please advance. In Kansas, code footprint requirements are only found in the Kansas Fire Prevention Code from the State Fire Marshal. That's why when we have something come up and we ask you to list the codes, we ask you, please list the Kansas Fire Prevention Code. And it's real significant because, like I say, it's the only place, and it is a prescriptive description of what code footprint is. One of the few documents in Kansas technical professions where every item is listed that is specifically defined what code footprint is. Next, please. Code footprint standardizes the information required of Kansas licensed designers. Now, see, the burden of code footprint is put upon licensed Kansas technical professionals, and it's not put on anybody else to use it. Part of the issue is in 1992, the Board of Technical Professions indicated that if you did not provide drawings prepared by a technical professional and they were at a certain level, the building permit would be void. And so the point I guess that I'm making is, and if the permit's void, it messes up everything else. So if we could advance to the next thing. Next slide, please. Now remember, it's for all new commercial buildings, building additions, renovations, and changes in occupancy. And new buildings, the code footprints are pretty simple and pretty clean. Before you get into the building additions, renovations, and changes in occupancy, and it's a mess. And trying to discern which code applied to what section of the building, if it has multiple additions like a school would, it's best to have that Kansas Fire Prevention Code as a backup, because some of these buildings were built before codes were enforced in Kansas. And so I guess what I'm telling you, before about 1994, you wouldn't want to write much more on those existing buildings built before 1994, other than that they were compliant to the Kansas Fire Prevention Code, because there was very little code enforcement effectively enforced in Kansas before then, uniformly across the state. Next slide, please. Now, remember, I'm a simple guy, and simply code footprint shows and tells. I'm a big show and tell guy. How to get from the inside of a building to a public way. And a public way is a street, an alley, even a parking lot attached to the building, but it has to connect to the street or alley. Please, next slide. Now, there is types of occupancy, including prisons, nursing homes, hospitals, those that were dependent, or the occupants are dependent on somebody else to help them. And so they built in something, and so simply the code footprint shows and tells how to get to the public way, but it gives them another interior or internal second exit so that they don't have to put them outside, because sometimes there's higher risk exposing the elderly or ill to outside environment. And so, and detention for security purposes, they run them to the other side of the building. So if a fire's in one compartment, they move them to another compartment. You'll be seeing, while you may not see the plan for this will come up with the new Salina County Jail. You'd move to the next slide, please. Now, part of the reason to show you this list is to show you I had shown the Kansas Fire Prevention Code earlier in a matrix that shows exiting, notification, detection, separation, suppression, all that in, and then, but to determine what the proper exiting is, you have to know the location, the occupancy type, occupant load, and then everything else falls into place. So next slide, please. Okay. Let me see if there we go. Okay. Now, don't look too much at the artwork. That's from the Capitol, by the way. But the one thing I want you to understand that code footprint is intended as a standalone document. It's supposed to be self-explanatory. It's supposed to be simple. It's supposed to focus on the strengths of features that support exiting from each individual building. And it's intended for the life of the building until the building is then modified. Last thing up there, I'm going clockwise, by the way. I didn't tell you that. I intentionally did that. So because it's logical to sort of follow it around. Provides a consistent historical reference to safeguard occupant exiting. It intentionally eliminates sections of the code that are not required. Notice I didn't use the term not applicable. Code footprint is intended to discern between what is required and what's not required. So when people started filling out sections of it and said not applicable, they are mistaken. It's not required. All the sections of code are applicable. It's just that they are required or not required. Next slide, please. Okay. Code footprint has been state law for all these commercial buildings since 2004. It's required statewide, and that, like I told you, is about 80,000 plus 2.5 million people. All new commercial buildings, building additions, renovations, changes in use. And then here's the benefit for people or agencies like Salina Building Department. It's an optional use. We don't have to use it, and we won't be penalized. It just is an offering that must be produced by the architect or engineer for the project and be available, but we don't have to look at it if we don't want to. Next slide, please. Okay. This is called the Bob document by the Board of Technical Professions. And what it is that was prepared for the Kansas municipality and also code officials brochure. And what it says, you can read all that stuff, but here's the point. The last paragraph at the bottom of the page, right-hand corner, the local code official can require the code footprint be submitted for his review at his discretion for any new construction, building additions, renovations, or changes in occupancy, regardless of building occupancy. And the one thing, if you read the administrative reg where this was put in place, it doesn't really give the time frame. So discretion means if it's 5 years later, the code official can say, hey, we need your help. We need the code footprint so we can understand and help the owner maintain all those features that you've designed in. So next slide, please. Now, to me, one of the beauties of code footprint is there's so many different people that are on the design, construction, and maintenance of a facility. It'd be nice to have a document that they can refer to and not be doing redundant work or doing insufficient work. And so the code footprint is really like putting everybody on the same sheet of music. Next slide, please. Okay. one thing that to tell you, there has been articles published about code footprint. There's a 15-minute video that was just produced and distributed by the Kansas State Fire Marshal's office through the Kansas Highway Patrol, and so it's high caliber stuff. And then a few magazines had article on it, and then I've listed when things started kicking in place, which was 2004, the Kansas Administrative Regulations, and then in 2016 they had updated the Kansas Municipalities and Codes Officials brochure, and then the Kansas Buildings Fire Safety Handbook, Fire Fact 10 with the State Fire Marshal. So there's some other additional resources, and there's a number of others, but these are ones that I could get on quickly. Please, next slide. Okay, just for grins and giggles, I live in Abilene, and Sealy Mansion is one of the most beautiful places I've ever visited, and bold. I used to lead tours down there as well as maintain their yard, and I tell you what, their bowling alley is one of the most fun things I've ever done at a place. And it looks like the system that you see down at the district Eat and Play at the Central Mall. So that gives you an idea of some pictures from within the facility. And if we could go to the next slide. And what I've listed here, oh, by the way, you're going to receive a copy of this, the slides that you've seen, so if you might refer to them or reflect. But that whole house is intriguing to me because it was built after the 1904 World's Fair in St. Louis, and they brought back a lot of artifacts from that fair and incorporated it into the building. And so it's health, safety, and well-being. And so I broke that down and provided the list for you. It's an interesting place. It's inexpensive to visit. And please, when you're there spending all your money in Abilene, please eat there because we've been hard hit by COVID as well. So next slide, please. One of the biggest things that's celebrated in Sealy Mansion is the Christmas time. The house actually was completed in 1905 at Christmas. In 1906, they put invitations out to 300 guests from Abilene and the area to visit and do a walkthrough of the house. And so they decorated to the hilt. And each year, they provide larger and larger displays. So Christmas is a big deal. So if you go next slide. Okay, part 2, example. What I've tried to do is to give you a couple examples from the past. One of them I know you may have seen. The other I'm pretty certain you haven't seen because both of these have my stamp on it. And anyway, my point is I use that to help explain or demonstrate what one would look like simply. So if we could go to the next slide. I guess I'm a little ahead of myself. Here's a couple forms that are distributed by the Kansas State Fire Marshal. And essentially what this is to help the design professional make sure that he's submitting a code footprint for the type of occupancies that they do reviews. And then the last page, or the second page, is, wow, that went wonky. Anyway, the second page shows you the items that are supposed to be included on footprint, gives you a simple checklist, and that form's been around now for about, I don't know, I think about 15, let's see, 17, probably close to 17 years. Because when I was there, I did the form and then left it with them. So we could move to the next slide, please. Okay. The University of Kansas had a number of code footprints. They effectively did a code footprint for every single building on their campus because they were using it as a management tool for all the work that was going to be done there, and they continuously have work done. And what happened is they found so much success with it, they finally shared it or shared it with the what used to be the state architect's office. It's now design and construction management and code compliance, I think. But anyway, these are elements or legends, a legend that we found that worked together in buildings that have multiple different types of, how should we say, code features or fire safety features. And so it's available, and that'll be coming to you as well. So if we could go to the next slide, please. We're up to example. And let's bounce on to the next one. Okay. This was obviously not the first code footprint, but this was the first code footprint that was sent out as an example to share with other people. It was actually called something else. This was from 1988. And at that time in Johnson County, there were a number of schools being built with exterior exits in addition to had interior corridors. But the ones when you have an exterior exit, it reduces the rating on those corridors. So they weren't at that time under that code, Uniform Building Code, they were not required to have rated corridors. And as you know, everybody blocked those rated corridor doors open, and so a lot of that was really tough to enforce. But that just gives you an idea, a quick glance of what we hope to see. I call the code footprint a scope document. It's a scope document for exiting, but also could be used as a scope document for access. So to make sure everybody's on the same page to know what components in terms of handicap accessibility and are provided. If you go to the next slide, please. Okay. Next slide after that. Sorry. Okay. One of the things that happens to us is we get changes in occupancy and renovations, and we have sometimes it's a combination of both. In Salina this year, we have a real opportunity to see something sort of unique. A church has bought, or actually I think they were given, a bowling alley that we've had replaced by a new facility here near City Hall. It's where all the city employees spend their lunches. No, they don't. But anyway, the point is that they took over this building and they're in the process of gutting it and pretty much done with that and are getting ready to start putting back because they're going to build a church inside this bowling alley. And so anyway, I had talked to them and they gave me permission to do a code footprint based on the information they had done as preliminary. And they told me I could then use this as an example to share with other people. And so what I'm doing here is this. You see by the example, I've isolated an 11 by 17 sheet to show you narrative. The narrative then, the font size can be a little bigger for people like myself who have trouble reading small print type. And I guess what I'm saying is that was the intent that had been worked out with the university when they were retroactively doing a lot of existing buildings. And so what this did for them is they could take this as a template sheet, change the things that were applicable to the building, but yet keep that sheet rolling. And so by formatting a single, they saved a lot of time. And then the advantage also is when it's 1 or 2 story buildings, they could have a sheet for each floor showing the floor plan, and it was a smaller scale. Scale of the floor plan, it can be really small, and that's what I want to show you. But the important part is to be able to read that narrative. And I do a lot of magnifying glass work or enlarge it on the screen. I do both. But I guess what I'm telling you is it needs to start up because large as you can get it, because a lot of this stuff, when it's either printed or it comes across the screen, stuff gets blurry. So I appreciate it. If we could go to the next page, please. Now, on a code footprint, you need to have a site plan because remember, the whole objective is to be able to know how you're getting from there to a public way And in this case, they open to a private parking lot that opens to alleys and streets. Now, one of the things that I've recommended on this one is because, and you'll see the floor plan next slide, but we're not ready there yet. So I went ahead and did calculations because they're going to have rooms with high concentrations of people, and so we have to have certain exit widths and certain numbers of people kick in different code requirements. But the other thing I did was just provide a simple legend schedule of rooms. And you see why this becomes a benefit when I show you the next slide, please. Okay. One of the benefits to us is we can see by proportion. We can see clearly where the exits are. Remember, this is a communication tool, and what we're trying very hard to do is to know where those exits are, because the whole idea is this document will hopefully follow this building from the time it's conceived until the time it's torn down or changes in use or is added onto. So that clearly when it's inspected by anyone, or if the management are working on this, they know what parts they are responsible for. From the first page, they can read what's in the building. It'll be fully sprinklered, and that gives us a lot of benefits. But I think very quickly you can see how that usually I can determine code compliance in somewhere between 5 and 15 minutes when I have it formatted like this. I ask for the walls to be solid. We get a number of submittals where they are coming in now that they're single line drawings. And I apologize, I cannot find where the walls are and the exits are. So that's why that kind of combination, by having solid walls, turning those, all that other information off, is helpful. One of the things that I have noticed in the last 5 years that's helpful is notice to the top of the page and to the left, I've used a map grid system, numbers at the top and alphabet to the left. And I'm telling you, when a question comes up on a building with stairs, rather than name the stairs, we just say, hey, we're asking about the stair at section A1 or A3 or B6. Sounds like bingo. So anyway, all I guess I'm saying is I think at a glance you can see there'd be a benefit in having a document like this throughout the construction process and throughout the maintenance process of the facility is very helpful. Now, the other thing I wanted to clarify is that these are all 11 by 17 individual drawings. You can then lay them out and format a 24 by 36 sheet, and hopefully then it fits with the format of field construction documents. Next slide, please. Okay. Years ago, what my interest was to get a statewide building code so we would all be on the same page. But from what I have seen in the past 30 years is that Code Footprint does a better job, and here's why. Because it applies to specific sections of code that apply to that building. So, and so it's, how to say, it eliminates the sections of code that aren't applicable, and so it doesn't confuse people as badly as the statewide building code might. Next slide, please. Okay, we're up to part 3, where Code Footprint has been used other than new construction. And so one of the things, and I'll talk about it a little bit, I worked for a short time, always a short time, but as always, I worked for a short time for a fire protection engineer. And so we went out to existing buildings and we used Code Footprint to identify sections of buildings that were non-compliant. And so we developed something called compensatory solutions. And we also developed a plan of correction. Sometimes, in fact, plan of correction is usually first, and then we implement some compensatory measures. Now, compensatory does not mean that it is to the letter of the code. It is under the provisions of equal or better. because with the whole concept and footprint as being exiting to get the occupants to the public way, if we could speed up their evacuation of the building by either the knowledge through the fire alarm system or automatic smoke detectors throughout the building, it would compensate for some of these other areas of non-compliance. So if we could start that next slide, please. An existing building, like I told you, I've read through that, plan of correction, and they work for a reference for future fire inspections because it's in the Kansas Fire Prevention Code. One of the things when I worked with the State Fire Marshal's office, we had almost no documentation that reflected any technical professional's work at all. Either it was that or we had enough to take a horse. We'd have enough plans on a Pizza Hut, choke a horse, and on a nursing home, we almost had nothing. And so we tried by this to sort of make a level playing field. Some of the other uses for code footprint, of course, is for educational purpose. That may not sound like much, but the thing that I have found from an early point, literally from the beginning and even before we started doing code footprint, that by combining narrative and with a graphic picture, we found out that people at all different levels understood the fundamentals of what was happening in the building. They didn't need to know the finishes. They didn't need to know some of the intimacies of the door locks and that, as long as we walk in and saw lever handles and attentive hardware where required, we could get on with it. Code footprint, as I told you, has been or will be used for maintenance of these buildings. By having the list of what they are, we now can look through that list and match it up with the required inspection and testing provisions of the code that make sure that the sprinkler is tested, inspected annually and tested quarterly, and as well as hood systems, and those be listed, and it's intended to help the owners take their responsibilities seriously and puts less burden than on the code enforcement folks. One thing I wanted to qualify about code footprint is it has two distinct parts, okay? And those two sheets that sort of got wonky on the screen there for a bit, one was the types of occupancies that go to the state fire marshal. The other was the types of features that are in the building. Well, I had a conversation just within the last 10 days with an architect, and there's misunderstanding. And I said that there are graphic parts, and it lists the parts on that sheet, what part is to be shown graphically, and then there's a part that says narrative. The idea with having the narrative, and I'll give you a couple examples, is we have assembly occupancies throughout the state, churches and entertainment and libraries, you name it. There's all kinds of bars and restaurants. And the whole idea is that instead of narrowing and cutting yourself, no slack at all, just write in that there will be emergency lighting throughout the exit paths of this assembly occupancy. If you try to measure and show exactly where those lights are, it works against you. What has happened a number of times is our inspectors go out, they see the footprint, it shows exactly where the emergency lights is supposed to be, and they have now got it as a pit bull and have held onto that. If it's moved 5 feet over, they make them move the light back. Now, you and I both know that at 1 foot candle, emergency lighting would have worked at the one location. But what happens is the experience is like telling a child, I want that, taking out the trash. And so they take out the trash, but they don't take it out to the curb. And you're going, oh, I got to be more specific. So in this case, we just use a lot of generalities in the narrative Save yourself some energy. The whole idea is that everybody reads it, but then when the code enforcers come in and there's no emergency lights in that room or there's no sprinklers in that, they go, hey, what's this? It's not sprinkled as it says it's sprinkled. Now, there's been failures in construction. That's part of the reason code footprint exists. When I first started my work in code enforcement, we had problems, and they were in those types of occupancies that I told you. Usually you want to start off on a good foot, so we included all new construction, but usually the worst problems occur in building additions and renovations and changing the occupancy. And all of those require code footprint by state law. We could go to the next slide, please. Is that it? There's no more slides?
That's all of them, Rick.
Okay. And I apologize, I'm not running this parallel on my computer. The thing at this time then is I'd like to ask if you have some friendly questions. Okay. I'm glad I've answered all your questions. And I guess what I'm saying is code footprint's a tool. It was never intended to be the end. It was a step. And because we had literally nothing to work with when I was at the State Fire Marshal, people would call us and say, well, you approved this. And I said, okay, you provide us a copy of the letter because we can't find any approvals. And what we started finding was they had done construction since an verbal approval was given, and they complicated their whole own life. And so we started requiring footprint to give us a chance. And even people without technical training were able to read it. So, well, if there's no other questions, we will send you copies of these slides, and there'll be others that could not participate today, and we'll send them a copy too. They've requested to be copied on the slide. So if something comes up in the future, please let us know, and we'll try to at least tell you what our interpretation of it is.
All right. Thanks, Rick.
Welcome.
Everybody would please don't forget to email me once this is done so we can get your certificates out. And I guess we could bring it back to Mr. Chairman McCall.
All right. Thanks, Rick, for that. Good information there. I know we've talked about it several times, so there'll probably be more discussions in the future.
Very good.
Number 5, public forum. Do I have anything from the public? Any comments the public would like to address? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 6 is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
All opposed? Hearing none, we're adjourned.